East side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, what's going on, Adam? How you doing? It's another episode of A Side, B Side podcast.
I am doing well, Brooke. It was a beautiful day up here in Minnesota. I made the ultimate mistake when it comes to weather and the fall. Last week we had some days where the high was like in the mid 50s, so I caved and turned on my heat and turned off the AC. And then today it was like 75, so I was out all day enjoying the weather, and I came home and my apartment was 80 degrees.
Oh.
I walked in and I was like, why is it so hot in here? It's like, oh, because you turned off the AC, buddy. Like, walking, my dog's like panting. She's like, dude, what's going on? I'm like, sorry about that.
Yeah,
we didn't really think that one through.
We turned off the air, but I've got a patio now, which I'm really excited about. It's like really cute little patio with a sliding door, and you can have the screen, it's got a little screen, so you can leave that open and open up all the windows. So it's been really nice because it's been in like the 70s. So it does get warm, but there's a really nice little cross breeze. And can I just tell you, there is something about this Nebraska sun. I took a selfie the other day and I was like, okay, Nebraska sun. Okay.
It's good lighting.
That Midwest lighting. Okay, I'm here for it.
Who needs a ring light?
Right. Just go outside about 2:00 in the afternoon in Nebraska and you're perfect.
About 3 weeks we'll see like a BuzzFeed story to be like, all the hottest Instagram folks are moving to Nebraska for the lighting.
Just don't move to my apartment complex. There's enough people already. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I saw this because I know we're both into, first of all, did you watch the What Ifs?
Yes, I've seen all the What Ifs. I enjoyed some episodes more than others, and like, spoiler alert and everything, I understand why they went the direction they did, but it was more enjoyable when it was just kind of one-off stuff to me.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool, the little, they end up kind of, because it's Marvel, they're going to connect in some way, but yeah. I enjoyed it, the one-offs. Like you said, there was one with Thor that I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun, and I think the starting off with Captain Carter was really good, and then having T'Challa become Star-Lord was really well done, and then the Doctor Strange thing was heartbreaking.
Oh my gosh, that was a deep one. That
one was
deep.
That was rough, and I wasn't a big fan of the zombie episode, or the one where all the
Avengers.
The Avengers get defeated, get killed before they become the Avengers.
Yeah.
So I was like, those weren't my favorite. But I did like how they kind of used, like, they didn't. I was afraid that the zombie episode was going to have a bigger part of it, and they just kind of did that for like one little moment in the final one,
right?
Which I was like, okay, cool. They let that be more of a keep it to itself thing, because I was like, we're gonna have Ant-Man's disembodied head like for the rest of the,
oh my gosh, that was just like, ugh.
Like, I feel like that was one of those where it's like, okay, this is good for like one joke episode, but if like that had kept going, it'd be like, guys, okay, we're losing the plot here.
Yeah. I think I really did love. I did love the Captain Carter one. I thought that was great, and it is interesting to see how they tied all of them, like I said, together. So, and also I think is kind of wasn't it supposed to be like a lead in to possibly the next round of Avengers, because it's not going to be Captain America and the Hulk.
Yeah. Well, and that's what everyone was assuming, but then did you see the news this week that they've pushed back a bunch of the movies?
That's what I was going to tell you. So Doctor Strange was supposed to come out in March. It's not coming out till May. Thor was supposed to come out in May, so they pushed that because now the date that Thor was supposed to come out, May 6th, that's where Doctor Strange is coming out. So now Thor, Love and Thunder, which has the female Thor, that's not coming out till July. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever now is getting pushed back to fall, almost winter of next year. The Captain Marvel sequel is getting pushed back from winter of next year to the following year. I mean, it's pushing things back completely.
It almost feels like they had a plan, and then they're reevaluating the plan based on the success of what's happened with like the TV series and the shows that have come out. Because I am interested in the next Captain Marvel movie, but I feel like the buzz isn't there. You know, like no one's really like lining up like, oh, we got to find out what happens next.
Right.
You know, you got a little bit in all this what if stuff. But then I did read, I don't know if you saw this, but Catherine Hahn, who played Agatha in the WandaVision series.
Yeah, she's getting her own show, right?
Yeah, and that definitely says to me like they were like, oh, she's a breakout star, we're going to involve her more, kind of like they did with Tom Hiddleston Loki. Whereas like I don't like Loki was not, like the success of that character, you know, has become much bigger than they ever planned originally.
Yeah. Well, and then the new Hawkeye show or whatever series is supposed to come out in the next couple of weeks, right?
Well, I thought it was closer to Christmas.
Okay.
Because they're doing movie like the Eternal, like so Shang-Chi came out, and then the next big one is Eternals, which comes out on the 5th of November. So I think they're giving it like, I think Hawkeye is going to be like a Thanksgiving Christmas thing.
Okay. Yeah, Hawkeye. Okay.
Yeah, because it's like the story that's based on that I've read about. I didn't read the story myself, but because I've never been a big Hawkeye guy. But the story sounds really interesting, and I love Haley Steinfeld. So that'll be interesting, and it all takes place in the holidays. So I think it just makes sense that they just kind of backload it to Christmas.
Yeah, November 24th is when it's set to come out. I wonder if she'll have any songs on the soundtrack.
Yeah, they haven't really. Is she the first musician that's been in the MCU?
I believe so.
Like musician first, actor second?
I believe so.
I mean, technically Brie Larson did have an album.
Oh gosh.
Way back.
Have you seen so Brie Larson, there's this one video that she like, I guess that was her hit song or whatever, which she looked like a mix between like Avril Lavigne and Taylor Swift, and it is so bad.
Yeah, it's cringy, and like she doesn't really like to talk about it all that much from what I've seen on the Instagram. So
you know that Jeremy Renner has some songs out too, right?
Oh yeah, he I in my Spotify playlist actually has one of Jeremy Renner's songs.
No.
Yeah, it's on one of my playlists. It's the one that was in a car commercial, and then what was it? Gosh, fine, I'm gonna look it up. But I actually really like the song.
Oh man,
I know it's like a guilty pleasure. Yeah, The Sign is what it's called. Yeah, it's very much a guilty pleasure song for me, but it's in my Spotify favorites shuffle. So that's my confession of the day. But we've talked about like going all the way back to I think episode 4 or 5 when I talked about Bruce Willis and the Return of Bruno. I've always had this weird thing for actors who then have try musical careers, and I had like Dog Star was Keanu Reeves' band where he played bass, and you had Bruce Willis in the Return of Bruno, and then you had Eddie Murphy's Party All the Time.
Yes.
Yeah. So I always was interested in like And then Jason Schwartzman's band, Phantom Planet, actually had a hit with California. It turns out that really wasn't it. Like he was kind of in the band, but not really. It was more his friends. So yeah, I've always kind of gravitated towards musicians who had tried to have a musical career. I know it's a bad choice, but sometimes it works. Yeah, sometimes it works out. I mean, She's Like the Wind. Wasn't that Jack Wagner?
Or no, that was Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze, yeah.
Jack Wagner had She's All I Need. I think.
Yeah, she's all I
Yes.
Need.
Don't you talk about Jack Wagner now, because Jack Wagner.
Hey, no, yeah.
That was the song for Felicia, because Felicia was I don't know if you remember, this was back old school General Hospital. Felicia was like some kind of princess from a foreign land, and she fell in love with, Jack Wagner, which I think he was Frisco and Felicia.
We're totally just ripping off like the Princess Grace storyline, or Princess Di in the mid '80s. I mean, why not?
Oh my gosh. Okay, totally way off topic. Okay, sorry.
Us off topic. I find that hard to believe.
I know. Bring it a bit, reel it back in.
Yeah. We never go off topic. We strictly stay at Angelina Jolie podcast.
So this week, my mom and my stepdad are actually coming in, and I still have boxes everywhere. So I am going to, we text about this, and I was like, oh man, she's probably going to say something about all my boxes. And you said I could tell her that 13 months later, you still have boxes. So I guarantee you, I am going to throw you under the bus and be like, well, he's been in his place for 13 months and he's still got boxes. We've just been here for 2 weeks.
Just get her talking about like, what's with that Adam guy? She'll probably be like, well, I can tell you some stuff. I'm happy to fall on that grenade. You'd be like, well, you think my house is messy. Well, let's talk about Adam.
It is feeling much more like home, because all of the big things, actually pretty much everything is here now. There's just like one or two things. I still have a smaller storage. There's like one or two things that are in there that just can't fit. So I just have to figure out, is it worth keeping or should I sell? And then I have like a little storage unit downstairs in the apartment complex that has like, Christmas stuff and the boxes that we used to move, because it was like, well, what's the point of throwing away all these boxes when, a year from now, if I want to get a house or something, I'm going to have to pack up and move again.
Yeah. I mean, and we are the age where sometimes you just say to yourself, this is a good box.
It's true.
I don't want to get rid of this box. It's a good box. I might need it for something.
That is it's so hilarious that you say that, because my daughter and I, we were like, well, is this a good box? Oh no, we can't throw this one away. This is a good box. This is still in really good condition. We can use this again. How funny is that? Yeah, no,
it's a definite stage of life when you reach that point where you're like, no, this is a good box. I'm keeping this box, because and it's directly related to that one time when you moved where you couldn't find boxes.
Yeah,
because every house, everyone who's listening right now knows that they've got boxes all across their house that they don't need until you need to move.
Yep.
Then boxes are like the holy grail. You have to get Indiana Jones and his dad to find any boxes, because you can't find it. You're like, do you guys have boxes? Like, no, we don't have any boxes. Like,
people do not want to give you boxes. Like, no. You're throwing it away.
Yeah, no, I've been yelled at going, like, there was a liquor store not far from my apartment once, and I went across the street and started grabbing boxes out of their recycling, and the guy came out to yell at me.
Wow.
And I was like, this is a very strange experience. Like, I'm stealing your recycling that you're getting no value for, and you're literally paying someone else to take away, but I'm not allowed to take it. So I just grabbed it and ran. That time I was pretty sure I could outrun him. He looked to be a little. I had a few years on him, so just took my 2 vodka boxes and ran.
Oh man! All right, so
and if your mom brings up anything about having a storage space deal, you can say Adam rents a storage space which has literally more square footage than his apartment.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, I figured that out today. It's like 10 more square feet. I have a tiny apartment and I have a very big storage. I have like a decent sized storage area, and they have roughly the same amount of square footage.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the rent on my storage area is much cheaper. If I could live there, I mean, it doesn't have like, electricity
Electricity or running
or like
water.
or running water or bathroom or anything. But I
Right.
mean, per square footage, it's a lot cheaper.
Just once they open the main office, you can just run in there.
Yeah, there's a bathroom downstairs. I mean, that sounds like a bad sitcom plot.
Yeah, it
Joe got
does.
kicked out of his house. He just went through a bad relation or bad divorce, and now he's living out of a storage area. Will the management company find out? What happens when Joe throws a party?
Find out next week
Yeah,
on
on the
Joe's life.
CW.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh,
It's like,
man.
living in storage or something. Life in boxes.
There you go. Life in boxes.
Yeah,
On the
copyright.
CW.
Copyright.
On the CW. Next fall.
Produced by Angelina Jolie. She's got enough money.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so
Okay.
this is the A Side B Side podcast.
Yes.
We talk for a little bit about storage every week to make sure that you've got all your storage needs taken care of. And now we're going to move on to the rest of our podcast. Which
If you need storage help, we can help you at 1-800-BOX Live in Boxes.
Life in boxes.
Life in Boxes. That's it. Yeah. Okay, so this is episode 66, which means Adam,
It
you
is my turn.
are first.
So this week, as I get to go first, I have been trying this year to embrace October a little bit more than I have in the past. As we have talked about many times, Brooke, I am not a big scary movie person. And by big, I mean I run away from them. I don't watch scary movies. I already have night terrors since I was a little kid, so I don't need more mental images. But this month I was like, okay, I need to try to find ways to embrace the spooky season, as the kids say. So I have decided, actually, it started a couple years ago when I worked at a financial company up here in Minnesota, and my team that I was a part of would always do team costumes. And I had never been a kid that really dressed up. Like way back when I dressed up, but we didn't do a whole lot of Halloween stuff. And I was never like one of those kids that would get super into costumes. And I didn't wear costumes probably from like, 12 until 38. And then the last couple of years at that job, we were doing group costumes. And so I really got into it and I was excited. And this year we've gotten to do costumes at my current work. And so I have gone full bore into it. I have 3 costumes set up for next weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we can wear costumes. I have 1 costume for Friday night. I have a 2nd costume for Saturday, and I have a 3rd costume for Sunday.
Man.
So I'm going for it. And so I was like, okay, for the last 2 episodes of A Side B Side for October, I am going to focus on Hollywood horror and that sort of stuff, which is challenging because usually we talk about on the A Side something that I've watched a whole lot of, and I have not watched a whole lot of horror. So today's A Side is going to have a list of movies that, of all the movies that we will mention, I have only seen one of them all the way through. Because I am a scaredy cat and do not like horror movies. But there are some good things that come with horror movies. They have tons of sequels. They are clearly very cheap to make because anybody can make them and they get made over and over and over. You don't have a whole lot of special effects usually. Basically, you just need some ketchup for the blood and you're good to go. But they also, because they have a lot of murders and the kill rate is high, you have a relatively large cast. Often. So that means that a lot of people get their start in Hollywood by being in a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So today we are going to talk about actors who were in horror movies early in their career that you may not remember or even know that they were in horror movies or will have completely forgotten. It is a very long list and there are some very surprising names. So whether it's a favorite sitcom star years before, or actors that were in a movie when they were kids, or even cameos by actors that you would never even think would be in a horror movie. We're going to go through a bunch of them today. So first of all, let's start with Jason Alexander. Brooke, when I say Jason Alexander, there are probably two roles that pop to mind.
Yep,
And I
Seinfeld
think,
and Pretty Woman.
see, I was like, and I think, that's like a personality test that you could give people. Like, what do you remember Jason Alexander from? And if they say Seinfeld, they're like, no, okay, they're one type of person. But if their immediate thought is the bad, like the super creepy guy from Pretty Woman, it tells you an entirely different thing about their movie watching habits. So he was in a movie way back in 1981, way before he was using the pseudonym Art Vandelay and making us all cringe and love him as a sort of a buffoon in Seinfeld. It was a 1981 film called The Burning, and it's based off of an urban legend in New York State. And so I was curious if maybe you had heard of this before, Brooke, but it was directed by Tony Malum, starring bunch of people that you've never heard from since: Brian Matthews, Leah Ayres, Brian Backer, Larry Joshua, and Lou David, none of whom I think went on to have any sort of career. But it focuses on a summer camp caretaker who is horribly burnt in a prank gone wrong, and then he seeks vengeance at a nearby summer camp years later. And Jason Alexander, with a full head of hair, which I had never seen before.
Now I gotta look this up.
Yeah, is one of his many victims. So is this an urban legend that you had heard of, Brooke? Or is this
not
a made-up urban legend for the movie?
I think this is a made-up urban legend for the movie, because I don't remember ever hearing it.
And of course, it's the 80s, so like every horror movie has like a summer camp and counselors getting killed off. Another famous summer camp with counselors getting killed off also had the first appearance of another actor in Friday the 13th, the original. One of the camp counselors, and pretty much the only one you would recognize who gets killed, is Kevin Bacon.
What?
Yes, in one of his very first roles. Another Seinfeld alum, Julia Louise-Dreyfus, of course, who was Ellen on Seinfeld, and then of course is Countess
Elaine.
But in the new MCU movies, she is Countess Val something 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 something.
Yes.
Don't call her Val. She was in the she showed up at the end of Black Widow. She showed up in the
Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier,
which we were talking before we started recording about all the new MCU series. We totally didn't even mention that one, which was great as well. It's very weird. But she got her big break in 1986 in a comedy horror film that went on to have many sequels called Troll.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess she only had a bit part in the movie, and of course, it being a horror movie about a troll, it bombed when it was released, but she played a woman who was possessed by the troll at one point. Another 90s sitcom star who would go on to change the hairstyle of many of the American the worldwide populace in the 1990s, Jennifer Aniston. She actually started out as the heroine of a film called Leprechaun.
That's right.
And
oh my gosh.
Tying back to another episode of the A-side, the Leprechaun himself was played by former That Guy from That Show episode star Warwick Davis.
Yes.
And evidently was meant to be much creepier and scary, but he was so funny that it became sort of a more of a humor comedy horror thing. Because he kept delivering the lines and making everybody laugh. And they're like, okay, we're going to have a little bit more humor in this horror than we expected. The list goes on and on. You've got Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey in the mid-90s were teamed up for a version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
Super weird. It was it's very strange. Everything I've read is a very strange version of it. You've got this whole like murderous family that Matthew McConaughey is the patriarch of, but then there's also the Leatherface involved in somehow, but he's kind of like a sidekick. Sounded very strange. Didn't see it, probably won't see it. The Children of the Corn, which has had like a dozen sequels based off of the original Stephen King story, which is super spooky. And Stephen King, I think we've mentioned before, is I can read horror. I can't watch horror. It's a very strange thing. I love his books. But in the many sequels of Children of the Corn, you had very early roles for Charlize Theron. Naomi Watts, and Eva Mendes.
Oh, wow.
Ryan Reynolds did a remake of the Amityville Horror, which, I mean, at that point, everybody knew who Ryan Reynolds was. But his daughter in the movie was Chloe Grace Moretz.
Okay.
Yeah, playing a very, very young, child in the movie. Speaking of younger roles, Michelle Williams, who, of course, was on Dawson's Creek, and then was she's won. I think she's won an Academy Award by now, and I'm blanking on what it was.
I think wasn't she in Brokeback Mountain?
Yeah, she was in Brokeback Mountain because that's where she and Heath Ledger fell in love. She was married to Heath Ledger. They have a daughter, but she's Academy nominated, if not won. I had completely forgotten, and this is the only movie on the entire list that I have actually seen all the way through. And I did not realize this because when I watched it, I was very much paying attention to Natasha Henstridge. But in the movie Species, at the very beginning, the villain or the alien is played by Michelle Williams before she transforms through the metamorphosis into Natasha Henstridge and goes around and starts killing guys.
Oh,
yeah, totally didn't know it. Oh, this one is just for you. You are a huge fan of Scandal.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony Goldwyn has been in all sorts of things. I did not realize that he was the voice of Tarzan in the animated Tarzan movie.
Yes, he was.
Did you know that his very first horror role was his very first movie role was in the horror film in 1986, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives?
No.
It was his very first role ever. Also, how the heck were we already at Part 6 of the Friday the 13th series in only 1986?
Right.
Like they were knocking those things out real quick. And of course, I mentioned earlier, Kevin Bacon, his first role was in the original Friday the 13th episode.
He just had another horror movie come out, last year?
And it's been interesting because a lot of these like folks have been in other horror movies since, but it seems like cyclical. Like they'll be in one early, and then like later in their career, they'll like kind of like dip their foot back in. Whereas it's like Johnny Depp, one of his first roles, and actually the role that made him focus more on acting as opposed to music, because he was a musician at the time. He was the boyfriend in the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
I guess he shows up in one of the sequels in a PSA as like a cameo role later on. Adam Scott, who is well known for Parks and Rec, also the incredible Party Down series. If you have ever, or if you've never seen the Party Down series, it is outstanding. I think it was on HBO or Showtime. It was like a short run series focusing on all these people in LA who are trying to become actors, and they're working for a catering company at the time. Super funny, really good. It also had, she went on to be on, she was in Best in Show, and then she went on to Glee as the principal. Blonde.
The one that hosts the comedy show. I know who you're talking about. I can't think of
one of her. So if you've never seen Party Down, go see it. Not a horror film, but really good. But Adam Scott, before that, was in the 4th installment of Hellraiser in the 1990s. And I have never seen any of the Hellraiser series. So I had to go to the Screen Rant article, which we're going to link on our website, to describe this film, and because I don't understand what's happening. So I'm going to read it directly.
Hold on, Jane Lynch. Sorry. Okay.
Jane Lynch. Yes, Jane Lynch. She's great. Party Down. I was one of her first roles. So definitely check out Party Down if you can find it. Also has Adam Scott, but he was in the 4th installment of the Hellraiser series as a character named Jacques. I'm going to go with a Jacques. Could be Jacques. But it is back in the 18th century in France. Jacques and his benefactor commissioned the construction of a puzzle box that acts as a conduit between our world and hell. Jacques then murders a prostitute in a ritual killing that conjures the torture-loving Cenobites to Earth, where they then go on to torment humanity for 2 good movies before moving on to Dreams, Cyberspace, Actual Space, and a really embarrassing low-rent 9th film that looks like it was shot in someone's backyard. I was like, well, that that is such a perfect description. It has to be read word for word because I don't think I could do that justice. And then, of course, there is my two favorite ones that I had never heard of that I was doing research. I was like, oh, people show up in horror movies. There's got to be a whole long list. But these two, one completely surprised me. The second one, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But the story around it surprised me even more. So back in 1980, there was a film called He Knows You're Alone. And in that film, there was a bit part for a comedy actor at the time by the name of Tom Hanks.
Oh.
Well before he became a huge, Oscar winner and everybody loves Tom Hanks, the producers and director and writer of this show this movie were ahead of the time because Tom Hanks' character is supposed to get killed in the movie. But everybody liked Tom Hanks so much and his character so much that they cut his death scene from the movie.
Oh, wow.
They were like, nah. They're like, we can't kill Tom Hanks. We can't do it. He's too nice. We're just gonna write it. He shows up, he talks for a little bit. He's a bit part, but they're like, yeah, we'll just cut his death out of the movie, which is the most Tom Hanks thing ever to happen. Leonardo Dicaprio, I missed him earlier. He was also in a horror movie early in his career. He was in the direct-to-video Critters 3, well before he became the heartthrob he was in Titanic, but it was one of his first movie roles. But the movie that completely surprised me, that the story around it, but didn't surprise me about who was involved, is Grizzly 2, The Concert, which was supposed to come out in 1987. It starred George Clooney, Charlie Sheen, and Laura Dern. And it dealt with a grizzly bear, who was a 20-foot tall grizzly bear, wreaking havoc at a rock concert.
Oh my gosh.
The best part about the story is okay, that's a dumb plot line, but the film itself has never been released.
What?
There was theft. The animatronic grizzly bear malfunctioned. They tried to rewrite the script a bunch, so it never got finished. But it's like a Horcrux because they have taken the film's footage is hidden in storage in Paris, and the audio track to the film is in a separate vault in New York City.
Why?
Because they don't want anyone to be able to release the movie. So they had to it's like a mystical mummy. We'll cut it in two and we'll put it in two different parts of the world so no one can ever resurrect this film. So no one has ever seen Grizzly 2, the Grizzly 2, The Concert, starring George Clooney, Charlie Sheen, and Laura Dern. So that was my favorite one that I had never heard of, to the point where you have to separate pieces of it and hide it on opposite parts of the world so no one can ever release the movie because it is that bad. So as I mentioned, we've got probably 15 movies that have been mentioned in this. I've seen one of them all the way through, and I don't want to see any of them. So normally this is the part of the A side where I tell you where you can find these movies to stream, or if you want to watch them. I will tell you, I didn't look any of them up because I don't want to know. I don't want to stumble upon it. I don't want to. The only one that I think I want to watch is the one that I cannot watch because they have separated the two parts of it, so it shall never be seen.
Yeah, that's the one I want to see.
Yeah, if that guy that bought the Wu-Tang tapes when he made all that money.
Martin Shkreli.
We didn't like him because Schreckle or whatever his name was, Schreckle. He made all sorts of money because he bought a drug and raised the price to astronomical levels. But then he bought the Wu-Tang album, and then he wouldn't let anybody listen to it. If I win the lottery, I now have a new thing on my list to do. I'm going to reunite the two parts of Grizzly 2, The Concert, and release it. So I have to win the lottery first, but that's my pledge to you, the listeners and Brooke, that I will, if I win the lottery, make sure that Grizzly 2, The Concert sees the light of day.
Now, are you gonna like show it for free, or are we gonna have to pay for it?
Oh, well, I mean, if I win the lottery, I'm just gonna do it for free. I'll probably like get a deal with Netflix, and I'll get Charlie Sheen and George Clooney and Laura Dern to do like one of those, broadcasts where they're all watching it and talking about it. It'll be fun. I think just having Charlie Sheen, George Clooney, and Laura Dern trapped in a room talking about a movie they made 35 years ago, in and of itself, would be worth the money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the only film that has ever had an Oscar winner, 2 Oscar nominees, because Clooney won an Oscar for Syriana. Clooney and Dern have been nominated. 3 Golden Globe winners, Clooney, Dern, and Sheen all won Golden Globes at one point, and a grizzly bear. So it's the only movie to have all of those ingredients.
Yeah, don't leave out the grizzly. Grizzly needs some props.
Yes, the malfunctioning animatronic grizzly bear that caused the film never to be finished.
I feel like whenever they tried to use animatronic animals, it kind of messed up, because that was the whole thing of Jaws too.
Yeah, I mean,
the shark was not functioning properly.
But you're asking a lot to that's why we've gone to so many to special effects, because it's less likely to break on you. I mean, if anybody's ever been to Chuck E. Cheese or Circus Pizza and seen the animatronic band, Showbiz Pizza, any of those animatronic bands, that like it can go wrong pretty quick.
They break down frequently.
Yeah. So that is the A side. A lot of your favorite actors were first in horror movies, and if you want to go watch them, you're gonna have to find them on your own, because Adam's too scared to look it up.
Oh man. All right, Adam. So I feel like we've had a lot of women lately, which of course, when we very first started this podcast, that was the whole thing. Like, psychologists or whatever used to say there's no such thing as female serial killers, which of course we have learned is complete garbage.
Is not true.
So for this week's B-side, we are going to have another female. Can you guess her motive before we even get into it?
So historically, women serial killers kill for financial gain or security or social status. And they often use poison. So my theory is going to be that this lady is using life insurance to get money by killing people with poison. in the library.
B-side over.
Yeah. The end. Adam win.
So this week we're talking about Amy Archer-Gilligan, aka Sister Amy, aka Sister Teresa, aka the Connecticut Borgia, which is in reference to the Borgia, the infamous Borgia family, known for sex and murder, basically. So
hopefully not at the same time.
I mean, everybody's got their kinks.
No, we don't kink shame on the A-Side B-Side podcast, but that's weird.
So Amy E. Duggan was born October 31st of 1873 to James Duggan and Mary Kennedy. She was born in Milton, Litchfield, Connecticut. Some reports say Milton, others say Litchfield. On the map, they're like 5 miles apart. So I think it's like where I'm at right now. I was basically looking, we were talking about earlier when we weren't recording, we were talking about like YouTube and getting local channels that list me as like Lincoln, Kearney. They're like really close.
Yeah. Same metro. Yes.
So Amy was the 8th of 10 children, because back in the day they believed in having all them babies. You got to help on the farm or around the house. So she attended the Milton School and the New Britain School in 1890. Besides that, there's not really much known about her childhood. It is suggested that she had mental illness that ran in her family. One of her brothers actually took his life in 1890, and she had a sister that was paralyzed from jumping off the roof of the family home.
Dang.
Yeah. So we're going to fast forward a few years to 1897 when Amy marries James Archer. Amy and James had a daughter named Mary J, not Blige, Archer, in December of 1897. Sorry, bad music joke. In, in 1901, the Archers became caretakers when they were hired to take care of a man named John Seymour. He was an elderly widower. So the Archers, they pack up and they move into John's home in Newington, Connecticut. So they care for John until he passes in 1904, so for about 3 years. His heirs turned the house into a boarding home residence for the elderly, and they asked the Archers, like, hey, do you guys want to stay and you know, be like the caretakers and run this and provide care for the elderly for a fee? The Archers in turn paid rent to this Seymour family, and they worked inside the boarding house. So the boarding house was called Sister Amy's Nursing Home for the Elderly. In 1907, John Seymour's family, a few years later, John Seymour's family decided, we don't really want the house anymore. So they sold it. So the Archers packed up and they moved 14 miles away to Windsor, Connecticut. And they used their savings to buy their own house on Prospect Street in Windsor Center. Soon, they were once again running a boarding house. They converted their new home into the Archer Home for the Elderly and Infirm. Also, there are some reports that say it was called Archer Home for Elderly People and Chronic Invalids.
I mean, they're real specific with their names.
Like, yeah, they are.
None of it's like Heaven's Rest. No, it's like, this is what we do here. If you do not fit the description, you do not enter the doors.
Are you old or sick? Okay, that's all we're taking. Old and sick.
Like if they ran a restaurant, it'd be like burgers and fries on a plate.
With a milkshake. That's it.
Is that the menu or the name? Both.
That's all you can get here. Burgers, fries, and a milkshake. We keep it real simple. Don't ask for a bowl.
Goes on a plate.
We keep it simple. So residents could pay fees of $7 to $25 per week, which nowadays would be about $203 to $726, or they could pay $1,000 for life back then, which would be $29,043 today. So they pay $29,000 and they're set for life.
And you know, somebody's like doing the math, like, okay, if we get $1,000, they're probably not going to live that long. So
yeah,
it's like we're assuming they'll live like a year.
Because this is a true crime podcast, we know they probably not even that long.
They were incentivized to
go ahead, give us all your money.
Yeah.
You're not gonna need it. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
So the couple also encouraged their residents to make them the beneficiaries of their estates, to make money management easier. Nudge, nudge.
Yeah. You don't want to have to think about that when you're busy dying.
Of course not. So Aussie.com notes that nursing homes were a relatively new type of facility in the early 20th century. So government oversight was essentially non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
So Amy Archer attended Catholic church regularly and was seen as a generous pillar of the community. Now, you remember a couple of weeks ago, we had Dorothea Puente, who made herself look like a grandma, and she went to church and she was seen as a pillar of the community.
Right. Yeah. Just what a nice lady. She's taken in all these hard cases.
So we're seeing this. That's kind of a running trend with some women. So in 1909, the Archers were hit with legal trouble when they were sued by a family of a resident for $5,000, which today would be about $147,000.
That's a good chunk of change.
That's a good chunk of change. So I could see why it was a financial hardship. The claim was that their family member was kept in unsanitary conditions. A separate resident lodged a similar complaint and was sent to a mental asylum, signed in, of course, by Amy. So in 1910, James Archer, the husband, passes away from what was considered natural causes. His official cause of death was Bright's disease, which is a generic term for kidney disease, even though he'd never before been diagnosed with any kidney disorder. Not surprisingly, Amy had an insurance policy on James that she had taken out, just a couple weeks before his death. It was just, it was just a coincidence, purely coincidental, that she took this policy out a couple of weeks before he died.
Yeah, I mean, just bad luck, really.
Yeah.
Or good luck.
It was her good fortune, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the policy, of course, listed her as a beneficiary and enabled her to continue operating the Archer home. On November 25th of 1913, Amy remarried, because what's a single girl to do? She needs a husband.
Mm-hmm.
Her new husband was Michael W. Gilligan, who was a widower with 4 adult sons. Michael was a wealthy businessman, and he was interested in both Amy and the Archer home. He felt he's a businessman, so he's like, I mean, that's a good investment. So their life as a married couple was cut short because Michael unexpectedly dies 3 months into their marriage on February 20th of 1914.
3 months. She didn't waste any time.
She wasted not a single drop of time. Okay. She was like, I got things to do. People to kill. His cause of death was listed as acute bilious attack, which is severe indigestion. And of course, we know who profited from his death. Yes, it was Amy. Even though they'd only been married for a few short months, for 3, Michael had actually drawn up a will, leaving his entire estate to his new bride. Spoiler alert, it was a fake will, but we're going to come back to that.
Oh, it was fake?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I feel like we're in Succession for a second.
So between the years of 1907 and 1917, there were 60 deaths in the Archer home. Okay, so check this out. From 1907 to 1910, there were 12. Okay, that's James Archer is still alive. From 1911 to 1916, there were 48. So death seemed to drastically increase after the death of James Arthur. I don't know if this is just my opinion, but maybe he tempered her drive to kill.
Yeah.
And then
like she couldn't be as obvious about it because somebody was watching. Or...
I don't know. But once he was gone, it was like, whoop, let's kill. So resident family members began to grow concerned and become suspicious as the death toll grew. One of the residents was Franklin R. Andrews. He was a pretty wealthy dude. In May 29th of 1914, in that morning, Franklin was out in the yard at the Franklin home. He was like gardening. Franklin's, he's older and he's living in the home, but he was relatively healthy because, again, it's a home for the elderly and infirm. So even though he's older, he was in really good condition. He was a really robust man. But within a day, his condition deteriorates to the point of death. He goes from being happy in the garden to just dead within a day. His official cause of death was listed as gastric ulcer.
That's why I don't garden. It'll happen. Boom.
So Franklin's siblings, headed up by his sister Nellie Pierce, ended up in possession of some of his letters, and in some of which Amy was pressuring Franklin for money. There seems to be a pattern that developed. Amy's clients tended to die not long after giving her a large sum of money. So the death toll continues to rise, and Nellie's suspicions continue to grow. So she reports her suspicions to the local district attorney. Remember, we're in the early 20th century, the 1900s. He was like, woman, why are you talking to me? I don't talk to women. Women know nothing, because it was the early 1900s, So he completely ignored her. Nellie basically, in a big screw you to the DA, took her suspicions to the Hartford Courant, which was a newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Still, I believe, a newspaper.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I believe it. I believe it's still going.
Nice. Look at that. Long-lasting newspaper. On May 9th of 1916, the first of several articles on Amy Archer-Gilligan and her murder factory appeared in the paper.
They do those news people, folks. They're good at making the headlines. Murder factory.
Murder factory. It was
then.
It was finally after then that the police started to take things serious. After these, like, the articles started to come out, then the police were like, oh, I guess we got to do something because, now it's out there.
I didn't realize it was a factory.
I thought it was just one or two, but now it's a factory. We have to investigate. So Zola Bennett, a private investigator hired by the Connecticut State Police, went undercover as a resident of the Archer home to gather evidence of, like, the house conditions, as well as Amy's theft from her residence. Zola was able to give police enough information to allow them to search the property. Well, of course, their search of the property, they find bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I take that back. They found bodies, but they exhumed bodies as well.
Oh, because they just, it was a home for elderly infirm, but with like long-term home as well.
Right.
It's eternal home.
Yes. So the bodies of James Archer, Michael Gilligan, and several others were exhumed and examined. There was 5 bodies in total, and they found that all 5 had died from poisoning, either by arsenic, which you said,
mm-hmm.
or strychnine.
Yeah.
So local drug merchants, or as we would say, pharmacists, testified that Amy had purchased large quantities of arsenic, supposedly to, you remember?
Kill rats.
Yes. Just like Nanny Doss said. A thorough examination of Michael Gilligan determined that it was, of his will, determined that it was a forgery that Amy had written.
I'm shocked.
So the author of The Devil's Rooming House, M. William Phillips, stated that the investigation into Amy showed that she was buying large quantities of arsenic to kill rats, but she wasn't the only one buying arsenic. A doctor and her residents apparently bought it as well. So there was an investigation into this doctor, Dr. King, because evidence seemed to be piling up against him, but suspicions were pinned back solely on Amy when they checked the purchase records. So he didn't have anything to do with it. They were thinking that maybe they had teamed up or whatever, but no.
Yeah, like this was it's your turn to go buy the arsenic.
Right. Every other time. So after evidence was found, in part thanks to Zola, the private investigator, of Amy sending her residents to the drugstores to buy large amounts of arsenic, the police were able to arrest her. Amy was tried for murder. Her trial began on June 18th of 1917. She was initially charged with 5 counts, but she had a pretty crafty attorney, because her attorney was able to have 4 of those counts dropped and the charges reduced to a single count: the murder of Franklin R. Andrews, the really healthy man, you remember, that was working in the yard?
Yeah, the guy who was gardening, who got killed by gardening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So on July 13th of 1917, a jury found Amy guilty and she was sentenced to death. She appealed her sentence and was given a new trial on June 12th of 1919. This time, she pled insanity. Mary Archer, remember Mary J., testified that her mother was a morphine addict, and Amy was again found guilty of murder on July 1st of 1919. This time, her sentence was life in prison. In 1924, Amy was declared to be temporarily insane, and she was transferred to the Connecticut Hospital for the Insane in Middleton, where she actually remained until her death of natural causes on April 23rd of 1962.
Ooh, so she was there for 40 some years.
Yeah. Her crimes were the direct inspiration for the Brewster sisters in the night. This is one you'll love, Adam, and this is a great movie, by the way. in the 1939 Arsenic and Old Lace play and the 1943 movie of the same title starring Cary Grant.
It's a great play if you ever get to do it.
I haven't seen the play, but the movie with Cary Grant, love it. Yeah. Love it.
I was as it was going on, I was like, Zola Bennett, somebody needs to do a show about Zola Bennett going undercover in the murder factory.
I know.
That is a pure JB Fletcher move right there.
So season 5 of Criminal Minds, Amy is mentioned as an example of an angel of death type killer who doesn't really have a preference for victims of a specific gender or with certain physical characteristics. They just kill who they kill.
Yeah, they're gonna kill somebody. You just happen to be them.
So Amy, in reference to Michael, her second husband, said, "We had tea together and crackers, and after that, he took these terrible cramps and groaning, and he lasted an hour, and he died of pneumonia." No, he died of you poisoning him.
I was like, that's not how pneumonia works. Like, I like how she like got a medical degree halfway through the conversation.
Right. I diagnosed him with pneumonia, and he died.
Yeah. He got the pneumonia. Yeah, it takes him quick.
But there you go. That's the story of Sister Amy, the Connecticut Borgia, Amy Archer-Gilligan.
Now I want to go watch Arsenic and Old Lace.
It is so good. It is so good. Like when I was reading that and I was like, oh man, I could see it though. I could see it. And then like I could see the connection, but just Cary Grant, man, he's so good.
That feels like that one is due for a remake.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you're gonna, like they're always remaking stuff. Like if you're gonna remake something, do something like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, and it's very funny. Like you could see, like I could see, like like we mentioned Adam Scott earlier. Like I could see him in that.
Yeah, or if they wanted to go the more mature route, because Cary, I feel like at that point, wasn't he a little bit older?
Yeah, I believe so.
You could get like a George Clooney, real dapper type, a John Hamm.
Yeah. John Hamm. I feel like he hasn't been doing much lately.
Yeah, really.
Every time I see him, he's just playing John Hamm in something.
I know.
Which, hey, I mean, if your role is just being you, there's no prep in that. I mean,
yeah.
You don't have to do any research.
But, there you go. That's the B-side. Well, of course, a special thanks to Janice Fringer, because Janice every month has been on our Buy Me a Coffee. She has a membership with us, and it just popped up that it was her monthly time again. So Janice, thank you, because you rock on as a hardcore supporter of the podcast. Thank you so much.
And special congratulations to Janice and the whole Fringer family, as Janice just became an aunt again.
Oh, yay!
Her older brother, who I don't know if we say people's names who aren't supporters of the show in they want their names out there, but congratulations to the whole Fringer family, as there is a new little one that just came into the world a couple of days ago. So
that's awesome.
Less than 48 hours. So
yay. Well, congrats to them. That's always a fun thing. So sweet. Also, to everybody that supports the podcast in any way that you do that, if it's just by listening, if you've talked about it with someone, if you DM us, if you share it with a friend, thank you to you. We might not know your name personally, but we thank you and we love you and we appreciate you. And we do this. I mean, we do this because we like to do it, but we also do it for you. So thank you so much.
And if you want your name called out, just send us a message. Yeah,
absolutely. You don't have to. You don't have to. I mean, if you want to buy us a coffee, you can, but it's not mandatory. Yeah.
Like next week's episode is just going to be an hour of us reading names. It's basically the book of numbers edition.
You can support the podcast again by buying us a coffee. It's buymeacoffee.com/A-side-B-side-pod. You can also help us by submitting stories. If you have a true crime story, if you have a movie, or you're like, hey, Adam, how come you haven't talked about this person? You can always let us know. You can Instagram us, you can Facebook us, you can tweet at us. You can also email us, asidebsidepodcasts@gmail.com. Of course, pictures and sources going to be on our website, or are on our website, I should say. Adam, what's the website?
A-side, B-side podcast.square.site.
Nailed it.
And if you're thinking about getting any of our merch for any of your loved ones for the holidays, order quick, because everything going to be slow in the holiday season due to supply chain.
Absolutely. 100%. We do, like Adam said, have merch on the website that, makes a great Christmas gift. Also, you can support the show by going to Spotify, by logging on to Apple Podcasts, like and follow. You can give us a rating. Also on YouTube, you can like, share, subscribe. So all of that helps us, and we appreciate everything.
And it is always when I'm out doing like research, or Brooke's doing research for our different episodes, we see like little messages from anybody, or somebody even just liked a post. All that stuff just kind of is a little bit of like emotional fuel on the file that just helps you keep going. So it is very much appreciated.
Absolutely. All right. So there you go. That's another episode. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.